African Jewish communities include Sephardi Jews and Mizrahi Jews living primarily in the Maghreb of North Africa, including Morocco, Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia, as well as Sudan and Egypt. Some were established early in the diaspora, others after the expulsion from Iberia in the late 15th century. South African Jews, who are mostly Ashkenazi Jews descended from pre- and post-Holocaust immigrant Lithuanian Jews. Beta Israel living primarily in the Amhara and Tigray regions of Ethiopia. Ancient communities. The most ancient communities of African Jews are the Ethiopian, Sephardi, and Mizrahi Jews of North Africa and the Horn of Africa. In the 7th century, many Spanish Jews fled persecution under the Visigoths to North Africa, where they made their homes in the Byzantine-dominated cities along the Mediterranean coast. Others arrived after the expulsion from Iberia. Remnants of long-standing Jewish communities remain in Morocco, Tunisia, and the Spanish cities of Ceuta and Melilla. There is a much diminished but still vibrant community on the island of Jabbar in Tunisia. Since 1948 and the civil war to establish Israel, which aroused hostility in Muslim lands, most other North African Jews emigrated to Israel. Of the 7th century immigrants, some moved inland and proselytized among the Berber tribes. A number of tribes, including the Jarawa, Jewry, and some tribes of the Dagatine people, converted to Judaism. Ibn Khaldun reported that Kaina, a female Berber warlord who led the resistance against the Muslim Arab invaders of North Africa in the 680s and 690s, was a Jew of the Jarawa tribe. With the defeat of the Berber resistance, none of the Jewish communities was initially forced to convert to Islam. See also, Jewish exodus from Arab lands. Ethiopia. In 1975, the Israeli religious authorities and government recognized the Beta Israel of Ethiopia as legally Jewish. Hundreds of persons who wanted to emigrate to Israel were airlifted under the leadership of Prime Minister Menachem Begin. Significant immigration to Israel continues into the 21st century. Begin had obtained an official ruling from the Israeli Sephardi chief Rabbi Ovadia Yosef that the Beta Israel were descendants of the 10 lost tribes. Rabbis believed they were probably descendants of the tribe of Dan. Rabbinical responses discussing issues related to the people date back hundreds of years. Due to certain aspects of Orthodox Jewish marital laws, Rabbi Yosef ruled that upon arrival in Israel, the Beta Israel had to undergo a pro forma conversion to Judaism. They had to declare their allegiance to a halachic way of life and the Jewish people, in conformity with practices followed by Orthodox rabbinical Judaism. He did not demand the normal formal requirements that the halacha imposes on potential Gentile proselytes. Few Ashkenazi rabbinic authorities consider the conversions to be actual conversions, not pro forma. Over time, due to their community's isolation from those in Europe and the Middle East, the practices of the Beta Israel developed to differ significantly from those of other forms of Judaism. In Ethiopia, the Beta Israel community was for the most part isolated from the Talmud. They did have their own oral law. In some cases, they had practices similar to those of Karaite Judaism, and in others more similar to rabbinical Judaism. In many instances their religious elders, or priestly class known as Kesem or Kesoch, interpreted the biblical law of the Tanakh in a way similar to the rabbinate Jewish communities in other parts of the world. In that sense, the Beta Israel had a tradition analogous to that of the Talmud, although at times at variance with the practices and teachings of other Jewish communities. One significant difference is that the Beta Israel lacked the festivals of Purim and Hanukkah, probably because they branched off from the main body of Judaism before these non-biblical holidays began to be commemorated. Today, most members of the Beta Israel community living in Israel do observe these holidays. They are a community in transition. Some of the Kesem accept the rabbinic, Talmudist tradition that is practiced by non-Ethiopian Orthodox Jews. Many of the younger generation of Ethiopian Israelis have been educated in yeshivas and received rabbinical ordination. A certain segment of traditionalist Kesem insist on maintaining their separate and distinct form of Judaism, as it had been practiced in Ethiopia and Eritrea. Many of the Ethiopian Jewish youth who have immigrated to Israel or been born there have assimilated either to the dominant form of Orthodox Judaism, or to a secular lifestyle. The Beit Avraham of Ethiopia have some 50,000 members. This community also claims Jewish heritage. Several scholars think that they broke off from the Beta Israel community several centuries ago, hid their Jewish customs, and outwardly adopted Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. Beit Avraham have traditionally been on the lower rungs of Ethiopian social life. They have held occupations similar to those of the Beta Israel, such as crafts. Recently, the Beit Avraham community has attempted to reach out to the world Jewish community. They formed the Ethiopian North Shoah Zionist organization in an attempt to save their Jewish identity. This group identifies as the Fashmura, as they do not have reliable proof of Jewish ancestry. Israeli religious authorities and other religious Jewish communities require them to complete a formal conversion to be recognized as Jews. Those who do so are considered converts. Somalia. The Igbo are a tribe that lives in Somalia, eastern Ethiopia, Djibouti, and northern Kenya. Though they have been Muslim for centuries, they assert they are descendants of Hebrews who arrived in the Horn of Africa long before the arrival of Somali nomads. They say that Igbo means Hebrew in their language. Faigl.ladislav. Today you will find the descendants of these Jews in the West African countries such as Sierra Leone, Liberia, Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, and many other areas. According to the 17th century Tariq al-Fatish and the Tariq al-Sudan, several Jewish communities existed as parts of the Ghana, Mali, and later Songhair empires. One such community was formed by a group of Egyptian Jews, who allegedly traveled by way of the Sahel corridor through Chad into Mali. Manuscript C of the Tariq al-Fatish described a community called the Bani Israel. In 1402, it lived in Tindiama, possessed 333 wells, and had 7 princes as well as an army. Another such community was that of the Zuwar ruler of Koukir. His name was known only as Zuwar al-Yaman, meaning, he comes from Yemen. According to an isolated local legend, Zuwar al-Yaman was a member of one of the Jewish communities transported from Yemen by Abyssinians in the 6th century CE after the defeat of Dunuwas. Zuwar al-Yaman was said to have traveled into West Africa along with his brother. They established a community in Koukir at the banks of the Niger River downstream from Gao. According to the Tariq al-Sudan, after Zuwar al-Yaman, there were 14 Zuwar rulers of Gao before the rise of Islam in the second half of the 11th century. Other sources stated that other Jewish communities in the region developed from people who migrated from Morocco and Egypt. Others later came from Portugal. Some communities were said to have been populated by certain Berber Jews, like a group of Tuareg known as Dorsa Hakor-Iddao Isharak. They speak a language related to Songhair, live in northeast Mali in the region of Menakar and were formerly herders for Tuareg nobles. In addition, some migrated into the area away from the Muslim rule of North Africa. The well-known 16th-century geographer Leo Africanus, an Andalusian Berber convert to Christianity, mentions a mysterious small village of African Jews southwest of Timbuktu, who traded in exotic spices, weapons, and poisons. Medieval arrivals. North Africa and the Maghreb. The largest influx of Jews to Africa came after the Spanish Inquisition after the fall of Granada and the end of Islamic Spain. The mass exodus and expulsion of the Iberian Jews began in 1492. Sicilian Jews were affected soon afterwards. Many of these Sephardi Jews settled in North Africa under Muslim and Ottoman patronage. Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and Egypt became home to significant Jewish communities. These communities were later incorporated into the Ottoman millet system as Africanized Ottoman Jews, bound by the laws of the Talmud and Torah but with allegiance to the Caliph of Constantinople. Mali. In the 14th century, many Moors and Jews, fleeing persecution in Spain, migrated south to the Timbuktu area, at that time part of the Songhair Empire. Among them was the Kehath family, descended from Ismail Yankot al-Yahudi of Shida, Morocco. Sons of this prominent family founded 3 villages that still exist near Timbuktu: Kishumba, Habomo, and Kongugara. In 1492, Askia Muhammad came to power in the previously tolerant region of Timbuktu and decreed that Jews must convert to Islam or leave. Judaism became illegal in Mali, as it did in Catholic Spain that same year. As the historian Leo Africanus wrote in 1526, "The king is a declared enemy of the Jews. He will not allow any to live in the city. If he hears it said that a Berber merchant frequents them or does business with them, he confiscates his goods." The Kehath family converted with the rest of the non-Muslim population. The Cohens, descended from the Moroccan Islamicized Jewish trader Lhadj Abd al-Salam al-Kuhin, arrived in the Timbuktu area in the 18th century, and the Abana family came in the first half of the 19th century. According to Professor Michel Abitbol, at the Center for the Research of Moroccan Jewry in Israel, in the late 19th century Rabbi Mordo Shabasira traveled to Timbuktu several times as a not-too-successful trader in ostrich feathers and ivory. Ismail Diadi Haidara, a historian from Timbuktu, has found old Hebrew texts among the city's historical records. He has also researched his own past and discovered that he is descended from the Moroccan Jewish traders of the Abana family. As he interviewed elders in the villages of his relatives, he has discovered that knowledge of the family's Jewish identity has been preserved in secret, out of fear of persecution. São Tomé. Principe King Manuel I of Portugal exiled about 2,000 Jewish children to São Tomé and Principe around 1500. Most died. But in the early 17th century, the local bishop noted with disgust that there were still Jewish observances on the island and returned to Portugal. Because of his frustration with them, although Jewish practices faded over subsequent centuries, there are people in São Tomé and Principe who are aware of partial descent from this population. Similarly, a number of Portuguese ethnic Jews were exiled to São Tome after forced conversions to Roman Catholicism. Modern communities. Madagascar. Communities have been forming in Madagascar in recent years and have been slowly growing throughout the region. Ivory Coast. Communities have been forming in Ivory Coast in recent years and have been slowly growing throughout the region. In addition, large groups of indigenous peoples referred to as Danites claim descent from the lost tribe of Dan, and many from this ethnic group have shown interest in Judaic practices. Gabon. Communities have been forming in Gabon in recent years and have been slowly growing throughout the region. Cameroon. Rabbi Yisrael Oriel, formerly Bodol Gimbus, was born into the Bar Saa tribe. He is one who says there were historically Jews in the area. The word Bar Saa, he said, is from the Hebrew for on a journey, and means blessing. Rabbi Oriel claims to be a Levitive descended from Moses. Reportedly, Rabbi Oriel made Aliyah in 1988 and was ordained as a rabbi by the Sephardic chief rabbi and appointed rabbi to Nigerian Jews. Rabbi Oriel claims that in 1920 there were 400,000 Israelites in Cameroon, but by 1962 the number had decreased to 167,000 due to conversions to Christianity and Islam. He said these tribes had not been accepted halakhically, but he believes that he can prove their Jewish status from medieval rabbinic sources. The father of Yaphet Kotto, an American actor, was a Cameroon Jew. Koto identifies as Jewish. Bankon is a tribe related to Bassa and Rombi groups, located in the north of Douala City, Abo subdivision, Bonali commune, in the littoral region of Cameroon. The word Bankon means son of prince, in Assyrian, an Aramaic dialect. In her works The Negro African Languages, the French scholar Lilius Homburger concluded that Bankon languages come. The word come means arise, or get up, in Hebrew. The Assyrians called the House of Israel by the name of Qumri. Ghana. The House of Israel community of Sefwi Osa and Sefwi Suai in the western region of Ghana claim that their Sefwi ancestors are descendants of Jews who migrated south through the Ivory Coast. The practice of Judaism in this community, however, dates back to only the early 1970s. Kenya. A small emergent community has been forming in Laikipia County, Kenya, abandoning Christianity in exchange for Judaism. There are an estimated 5,000 of them at the present time. Although at first Messianic, they concluded that their beliefs were incompatible with Christianity and are now waiting to be instructed in traditional Judaism. Some of the younger children of this community have been sent to the Abayudaya schools in Uganda to be instructed in Judaism and other subjects. Nigeria. The Igbo Jews of Nigeria are among the Igbo ethnic group. Certain Nigerian communities with Judaic practices have been receiving help from individual Israelis and American Jews who work in Nigeria with outreach organizations like Kulanu. The number of Igbos in Nigeria who identify as Jews is not known. The community has 26 synagogues of various sizes. An estimated 30,000 Igbos were practicing some form of Judaism in 2008. Uganda. In a relatively new movement, the Abayudaya of Uganda have converted to Judaism since 1917, influenced by the American William Saunders Crowdy, who said that African Americans were descended from the Jews. Zimbabwe. The Lemba, many of whom practice Christianity but have preserved some rituals and customs believed to be Jewish in origin, has been found to have genetic traits in common with other Jewish groups, supporting their claims to ancient Jewish ancestry. Recent DNA testing on the Lemba by the South African Medical Journal tested both South African Ashkenazi Jews and Lemba for the extended Cohen model haplogroup. Although the 24 individuals were identified as having the original Cohen model haplogroup, only one South African Jew harbored the extended CMH. However, this study does not support earlier claims of their Jewish genetic heritage. European Zimbabwe Jewish community. The Zimbabwe Jewish community was of British citizenship, and established with the first white colonists in the 1890s. At its peak in the early 1970s, it numbered some 7,500 people, who lived primarily in the two communities of Salisbury and Bulawayo. Smaller rural communities also existed for short periods in KK, Umtali and Gatuma. The community declined in part due to age, but most ethnic European Zimbabwe Jews left after violence and social disruption. In 2007, the white Jewish community had declined to 270. The community had strong links with Israel. In 2003, the Bulawayo shul was burnt down in an anti-Semitic act of violence. Mauritius. According to the 2011 census carried out by Statistics Mauritius, there are 43 Jews in Mauritius. Modern communities of European descent. South Africa has a substantial, mostly Ashkenazi Jewish community. They and their ancestors immigrated mostly from Lithuania prior to World War II, although some immigrated from Britain, Germany, and Eastern Europe. To a lesser extent, Sephardic Jews, primarily originating from the island of Rhodes, also settled in sub-Saharan Africa. in territories such as the Belgian Congo. Subsequently, members of these Jewish communities migrated to South Africa. Small European Jewish communities developed historically during the colonial years in Namibia, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Swaziland, Botswana, Zaire, Kenya, Malawi, and Zambia. The communities, usually based in the capitals of these countries, established synagogues and often formal Jewish schools. There was a Jewish community in Maputo, Mozambique, but, after the independence of the country, most left. The government has officially returned the Maputo synagogue to the Jewish community, but little or no Jewish community remains to reclaim it.